My son sent me a text that read, "Don't expect me to take care of you when you're old. I have my own life and my own family." I replied with all the calm in the world, "That's fine." And the very next day, I changed my will. When he found out what I had done, he burst into my house in a fit of rage. I'm glad you're here with me. Please, listen to my story until the end. I spent 32 years building a life I was proud of. My wife, Ruby, and I raised our son, Dante, in a modest but comfortable house on the outskirts of Savannah. We weren't wealthy, but we were prudent. We saved, we invested carefully, and we paid off the mortgage early. When Ruby passed away 5 years ago, from a sudden heart attack, I inherited everything we had built together. The house, her pension, and our investments. It wasn't a massive fortune, but it was enough to live comfortably and perhaps leave something meaningful behind when I was gone. Dante had always been a good son, or so I thought. He called regularly, came to see me on the holidays, and brought his wife, Tasha, and their 2 children. We had Sunday dinners and celebrated birthdays. I helped them whenever I could, watching the kids, or sending over a wire transfer when they needed a new roof, or when Tasha's car broke down. Was I being a grandfather, or was I being used? Back then, I didn't ask myself that question. The first crack appeared 6 months ago. Dante called, his voice tense and on the verge of collapse. They needed $15,000, he said, for medical expenses. Tasha's mother had cancer, and the insurance wouldn't cover certain treatments. I didn't hesitate for a second. I transferred the money the next day, but something stuck in my mind. At our next dinner, I casually asked how Tasha's mother was doing and how the recovery was going. She looked at me, confused, and asked, "Recovering from what?" Dante intervened quickly, saying I had misunderstood and that they were preventative treatments, but the damage was already done. I saw the lie in his eyes. I started paying attention, truly paying attention. I noticed how Tasha's expression hardened whenever I mentioned my investment portfolio, and how Dante steered the conversation toward my plans for the future. There were casual comments about how maybe it was time to think about an assisted living facility. "You're getting older, Pop. Wouldn't it be easier for you?" I was 71 years old and still went for a 3-mile jog every morning. I didn't exactly see what I needed help with. Then came the message that changed everything. I was drinking coffee in the kitchen, the morning light streaming through the windows Ruby had picked out herself, when my phone buzzed. It was Dante. I smiled, thinking it would be a photo of my grandkids. Instead, I read words that felt like a slap in the face. "Don't expect me to take care of you when you're old. I have my own life and my own family." My hands shook. I read it over and over. There was no context, no prior argument. Just 3 days earlier, we had dinner together, and everything seemed normal. What had triggered this, or had this resentment been simmering for years behind polite smiles and Christmas visits? I sat there for almost an hour, watching my coffee grow cold. How do you respond to something like that? By begging? By apologizing for being a burden I hadn't even become yet? By defending myself against accusations I didn't understand? I wasn't going to do any of that. I took a deep breath, straightened my back the way Ruby used to like, and wrote 2 words. "That's fine." Nothing more. I pressed send and left the phone on the table. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. If Dante wanted to draw that line in the sand, I would respect it. But respect goes both ways, doesn't it? That same afternoon, I called my lawyer, Arthur Sterling. We had worked together when Ruby died, updating my will and organizing the estate. "Arthur," I said when he answered, "I need to revise my will. Can you fit me in this week?" "Of course, Clarence. Is everything okay?" "Everything is perfectly clear," I replied. And for the first time in months, maybe years it was, I saw my situation with absolute clarity. I wasn't going to be anyone's retirement plan or anyone's jackpot. If Dante had his own life and his own family, then I had my own life and my own legacy to decide. I spent the next 2 days thinking calmly about what I wanted to do and who truly deserved what I had built over a lifetime. The answer came easier than I expected. I wrote notes, made lists, and researched foundations. When I walked into Arthur's office that Thursday morning, I knew exactly what I wanted. What I didn't know was that Dante still had access to one of my statements through an old joint account we had opened years ago, just in case. I also didn't know he checked it regularly, nor did I know he would see the payment to Sterling and Associates law firm, or how far he would go when he found out what I had done. The meeting with Arthur didn't even last an hour. He didn't judge me or question my decisions. He simply listened, took notes, and promised to have the new documents ready for my signature in a week. Leaving his office, I felt lighter than I had in months. That was freedom, the power to choose your own path, even in death. I walked home through the same streets I always did, passing the park where I used to push Dante on the swings, and the ice cream shop where we celebrated his graduation. The memories didn't hurt anymore. They simply existed, separate from the current reality. People change, relationships evolve, and sometimes they grow stronger. Other times, they reveal they were built on foundations less solid than we believed. Back home, I made lunch and tried to stick to my routine, but my mind kept drifting back to that message. "Don't expect me to take care of you when you're old." The cruelty of that sentence still stung. However, beneath the pain, something else began to grow. Curiosity. What had truly driven him? What did he really want? I pulled out my financial records and started looking at them with fresh eyes. There it was, $15,000 for Tasha's mother's treatment, another $5,000 from 2 years ago for a supposed family emergency fund that ended up being a vacation, $3,000 here, $7,000 there. The amounts were small enough not to question at the time. I had never added them up, but seeing them all together, the pattern was undeniable. In 4 years, I had given them more than $47,000. Had it really gone toward what they said? Or had I been financing their lifestyle while they waited for the real prize, my death? My phone rang. Dante. My stomach tightened. I let it ring 2, 3 times before answering. "Hey, Pop." His voice was tense. "We need to talk." "About what, son?" I replied in a neutral, pleasant tone. "About your meeting with the lawyer." "What are you doing?" So he knew. The old joint account. Of course. I had forgotten about that safety net we created when Ruby got sick. I had meant to close it after she died, but I kept putting it off. It was a lapse in judgment. I wouldn't make that mistake again. "I'm just updating some documents," I said. "Estate planning stuff, nothing to worry about." "Nothing? Pop, you can't change your will without talking to me." Something cold settled in my chest. "I can't? It's my will, Dante. My assets. To distribute as I see fit. After everything I've done for you, all the time I've spent looking after you." I almost laughed. "Looking after me? I live alone. I manage my own house, my own finances, and my own life. What exactly have you taken care of, Dante? You know what I mean. I'm your son. I'm family. Yes, I said softly. You are. And family doesn't send messages telling their elderly father not to expect support or care. Silence. Then he muttered, I was angry. I didn't mean it. Of course you meant it, I interrupted. And I am respecting your wishes. You have your own life and your family. I have mine. Pop, don't do this. Don't be stubborn. Stubborn. He called me stubborn, and soon he would add even worse words. I closed my eyes and counted to 5. I have to go, Dante. I have an appointment. Pop. I hung up. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear, from rage. I realized I had been manipulated for years by someone I had raised, loved, and sacrificed so much for. How long had I been nothing more than a bank account, with a pulse to him? I needed a plan, not just updating the will. That was already in motion. I had to protect myself, shield my assets, and ensure no one could challenge my decisions. Arthur had mentioned living trusts and irrevocable transfers before. I needed to understand my options, and above all, what kind of enemy I was facing. I spent the night researching financial elder abuse, undue influence, and inheritance litigation. The stories I found were chilling. Children emptying their parents' accounts, forging children's, even accelerating their dads to collect an inheritance sooner. Was my own son capable of something like that? I didn't want to believe it, but that message stayed on my phone as proof I couldn't ignore. He had shown me who he was, and I had to believe him. By midnight, I had outlined a plan: document everything, keep records, build a case if necessary, and make strategic changes to protect what was mine and direct it to people and causes that truly deserved it. The next morning, I returned to Arthur's office with a new determination. I want to set up a living trust, I told him, and I want to transfer my primary assets into it immediately. Arthur leaned back in his chair, looking at me over his glasses. Clarence, that's a big step. Once assets are in an irrevocable trust, you won't be able to dispose of them with the same freedom. Are you sure? I'm 71 years old, Arthur. I have a pension, Social Security, and more than enough in my checking account to live well for many years. The house, the investments, I don't need them to be liquid. I need them to be protected. He nodded slowly. Protected from whom? From anyone who tries to say, I'm crazy, or manipulated when I've made my final wishes clear. From my son, I finally said it out loud. The truth I had been circling for days. Arthur didn't seem surprised. I'll prepare the documents, he said. But Clarence, this will take some time. And if Dante has access to your financial info, I'm closing that account today. I'll open a new one at a different bank. He won't see another move. Good, but be prepared. When he sees the transfers to the trust, he'll know something major has happened. Let him know, I answered. I'm not hiding. I'm just protecting what's mine. I left Arthur's office and went directly to the bank where Ruby and I had kept our accounts for 30 years. I closed the joint account with Dante, opened a new one in my name only, and requested that all my automatic payments be moved there. The manager, whom I had known for years, handled the paperwork efficiently, but looked at me with some concern. "Mr. Galt, is everything all right? It's unusual to close accounts like this." "Everything is fine," I smiled. "I'm just simplifying my finances." She didn't look convinced. By Thursday of that same week, the trust documents were ready. Arthur worked fast, and I appreciated his discretion. The Clarence Galt Living Trust would become the owner of my house, my investments, and my savings. Everything except the checking account I needed for daily expenses. I chose the beneficiaries carefully. A scholarship fund at the university where Ruby had earned her degree, the animal shelter where we adopted our dog, the city's children's hospital, and a small legacy for my niece, Keisha, who had always kept in touch without ever asking for a thing. Dante's name appeared nowhere. I signed the papers in Arthur's office with his assistant and secretary as witnesses. When we finished, Arthur shook my hand. "The transfers will take about a week. After that, these assets are locked. You won't be able to change the beneficiaries without undoing the entire trust." "I understand," I said. "That's exactly what I want." "Thank you, Arthur." That night, Dante called again. I didn't answer. He called 3 more times. On the 5th, I finally picked up. "Where have you been?" he snapped, his voice thick with anxiety. "I've been trying to get a hold of you for days." "I've been busy," I replied calmly. "What do you need, Dante?" "What do I need? Pop, your bank account is gone. I tried to log in to check on your finances, and it doesn't exist anymore." So he was monitoring me regularly. That hurt like a physical blow. Not just the control, but the audacity. "I closed it," I said. "It was time to reorganize my accounts." "Reorganize? Pop, what's going on? First the lawyer, now this. Are you sick? Is something wrong?" "I'm fine," I said. That concern a week ago would have touched me. Now, I only heard the fear hiding behind it. The fear that the inheritance was slipping through his fingers. "I'm perfectly fine, Dante. I'm just putting my affairs in order. It's what a responsible adult does." "You're acting paranoid, Pop," he insisted. "Who's putting ideas in your head? Who's telling you things about me?" "The only person who told me anything about you was you," I answered softly. "Do you remember? Don't expect me to take care of you when you're old. I have my own life and my own family." "I told you that was stress. I didn't mean it for real." "Of course you did. And I am respecting your boundaries. You don't want the responsibility of caring for me. Perfect. That also means you don't get the benefits." "What benefits? What are you talking about?" "Good night, Dante." I hung up before he could respond. My hands didn't shake this time. My heart didn't race. I felt serene, lucid. For the first time in my 71 years, I was putting myself first. And it felt like coming to the surface after being underwater for too long. 2 days later, on a Saturday morning, I was in the garden pruning my roses when I heard a car screech to a halt in the driveway. A door slammed. Fast footsteps approached. I didn't even have time to stand up before Dante burst through the garden gate, red with rage. "Do you want to tell me what the hell you've done?" he shouted. I set the shears down carefully and looked at him. "Lower your voice. The neighbors can hear you." "I don't care about the neighbors. I just talked to the bank. They told me you've transferred almost everything. Everything, Pop." "Where is that money?" "In a trust. And it's none of your business." "How is it none of my business?" He stepped closer, towering over me. "That money was supposed to be mine. Mom worked her whole life for that." "Mom worked her whole life for us," I corrected him. "For our family. For our life together. She's gone now. And it's my money. Mine to do with as I see fit." You can't do this. I'm going to contest it. I'll prove you're not in your right mind. I stood up then, looking him in the eye. Try it. I have medical reports proving I'm in perfect health. I have witnesses that my decisions are conscious. I have documentation for every step I've taken. What do you have, Dante? A text message telling me not to count on you. He turned pale. You don't understand. We need that money. We've been counting on it for years. Why do you need it so urgently? I asked. What is so important? He didn't answer. He just held my gaze. And in that instant, I saw it all, with brutal clarity. The calculation, the resentment, the ugly truth of what I had become to him. I wasn't his father. I was his retirement plan. Get out of my house, I said in a very low voice. And don't come back unless you're invited. He left, but I knew it wasn't over. I had crossed a line, and Dante wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. I went inside, and I locked the door, and called Arthur. It started, I told him. I need to know what legal protection I have. He moved quickly. By Monday morning, I had copies of all my documents stored in a safe at my new bank, digital copies on a secure cloud, and a signed letter from him describing my full mental capacity and the voluntary nature of all my decisions. He suggested one more thing, a formal letter to Dante putting my reasons in writing. If this goes to court, he explained, it helps to have a clear record of your reasoning. No emotion, just facts. I spent Tuesday afternoon writing that letter. It was harder than I imagined. How do you explain to your own son that he's failed you without sounding bitter? How do you turn a betrayal into legal language? In the end, I kept it simple. Dante, let this letter serve as a record that I, Clarence Galt, being of sound mind, have decided to establish a living trust and designate beneficiaries according to my will. This decision is based on your express refusal to provide any kind of care or support for me in my old age, as you wrote to me on that day. I respect your right to prioritize your family, and I am exercising mine to prioritize my legacy. This is not a punishment. It is self-protection. I signed it before a notary at the bank. On Wednesday, Dante returned it, this time accompanied by Tasha. I heard the car arrive around 2 in the afternoon. I was reading in the living room with a cup of cold tea on the table. When the doorbell rang, I thought about not opening it, but hiding would only delay the inevitable. On the porch, Tasha was wearing an expensive coat I was almost sure I had helped pay for with one of those emergency loans. Her smile was tight and measured. "Clarence, we need to talk," she said. "Can we come in?" "No," I replied. "We can talk here." "Pop, don't be ridiculous," Dante snapped. "I'm not being ridiculous. You came to my house without warning. You burst into my garden screaming. And now you expect hospitality? Say what you have to say from the porch." Tasha's smile cracked. "Fine. We're here because we're worried about you. Dante told me about the sudden changes you've made with the money, and frankly, it concerns us. At your age, people can be vulnerable to scams, to manipulation. Are you suggesting I have been scammed?" "What we're saying," Dante intervened, "is that you're not thinking clearly. Pop, you've never made such impulsive decisions. Moving all your money, leaving us out." "I haven't left you out of anything you were entitled to," I replied. "You left yourselves out when you made it clear as I was a burden you didn't want." "I never said that." I pulled out my phone, opened the message, and showed it to him. "Read it again. Don't expect me to take care of you when you're old. I have my own life and my own family." Your words, Dante. Time-stamped. Saved. Tasha's eyes widened. She looked at Dante. "You sent that?" He flushed. I was angry. He had been pressuring me about the money for the roof, and I had just lost a client. And it doesn't matter. He's my father. He can't just disinherit me. Actually, I said calmly, I can, and I already have. Not out of spite, Dante, but out of self-respect. You made it very clear what our relationship meant to you. I'm just honoring that. This is about the money, Tasha said suddenly, her voice very cold. Do you think all we care about is the money? We've been there for you. We visit you, we call you, we include you in our lives. You come 4 times a year, which I replied. You call when you need something. You included me as long as I was financing your life. I looked directly at her. By the way, how is your mother? Recovered from that cancer treatment I paid for. She went silent. Dante grabbed her arm. We don't have to listen to this, Pop. You have a week to think it over. 1 week to reverse these absurd changes. If you don't, I'll contact a lawyer. I'll file to have you declared incompetent. I'll contest that trust. I'll let everyone know what you're doing. Go ahead, I said. I have a lawyer too, a very good one, and I have documentation you won't be able to fight. Medical reports, witness statements, a history of your attempts to take advantage of me. Test me, Dante, please. They left. Tasha was crying. Dante was grim, his jaw set. I watched them drive away and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret, just a quiet determination. But that night in bed, fear crept through the cracks. What if he really did go to a lawyer? What if he convinced a judge I wasn't in my right mind? I knew stories of elderly parents whose children stripped them of their guardianship and absolute control of their lives. Could that happen to me? I slept little. In the morning, I was exhausted, and my hands were shaky. I called Arthur again. He's threatening to sue me, I told him. He can try, he replied calmly. But Clarence, you have something almost no one in your situation has: preparation. We've documented everything. Your medical reports are spotless. There are witnesses. As long as he can't prove real incapacity, which he can't, he has no case. Still, the toll it takes, I know. That's why I'm going to recommend something. Take a few days for yourself. Go somewhere quiet. Stay with a friend or someone you trust. Let Dante burn himself out making threats while you recharge your strength. You're going to need it. He was right. I called my friend Evelyn, whom I had known since college. She lived 2 hours away in a small coastal town and owned a little bookstore. She had always offered me her guest room. When I told her generally what was happening, she didn't hesitate for a second. Come stay with me. Bring nothing but comfortable clothes and a desire to breathe. We'll walk on the beach, and I'm going to remind you what peace feels like. I packed a bag and left Thursday morning. I didn't tell Dante where I was going. I just went. For 3 days I walked on the beach, helped Evelyn in the bookstore, and read novels I had been putting off for years. I slept deeply, without nightmares, and remembered who I was beyond being Dante's father. I was Clarence, a man who had built a life, who had loved, who had survived loss, and who deserved respect. When I returned home Sunday afternoon, I felt ready for whatever was coming. A letter was waiting for me under the door, not in the mailbox, obviously left there on purpose. Expensive paper, Tasha's handwriting. Dear Clarence, I hope you can forgive Dante's outburst. He's under a lot of stress at work, and when he's stressed, he says things he doesn't mean. We both know how much he loves you. We want to fix this. We'd like to invite you to dinner this Friday at your favorite restaurant. Let's talk as a family, not as enemies. We miss you. The kids miss you. Malik keeps asking why Grandpa doesn't come around anymore. Please, give us a chance to make things right. Love, Tasha. I read it twice. The manipulation was so transparent, it was almost insulting. Invoking the grandkids, appealing to my emotions, turning Dante's cruelty into a simple reaction to stress, implying that I was the one creating the conflict. It was a masterclass in emotional blackmail. The old Clarence would have hesitated. He would have thought, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I should listen to them. The new Clarence, the one who had just spent 3 days remembering his own worth, simply tucked the letter into a folder, labeled documentation, and noted the date. 2 days later, flowers arrived. 2 dozen roses with a card. Pop, I'm sorry. Let's talk. Dante. I took a photo of the card, added it to the folder, and took the flowers to the nursing home around the corner. The staff was happy. I didn't mention who they were from. Then the calls started. No longer out of rage, but out of pleading. Tasha called first, her voice soft and conciliatory. Clarence, please. We made mistakes. We can overcome this. Family is supposed to forgive. And family is also supposed to respect, I replied. To treat each other with dignity. Not to see the other person as an ATM. That's not fair. We never. Tasha, I have records of every penny. I corrected myself. Every dollar I've given you in the last 4 years, $47,000 for emergencies, you never quite explained. Do you want it to review them together? She hung up. Dante tried next. His approach was different, hurt, confused. Pop, I don't understand what's happened to you. You've changed. You're not the person who raised me anymore. You're right, I said. The person who raised you was a doormat. Someone who put everyone else's needs above his own dignity. That's not me anymore. Is that it? Pop, please, let's just have dinner once. If you still feel the same afterward, I'll accept it. But give us a chance. I was on the verge of saying yes, not because I believed him, but because I was tired. Saying no over and over is exhausting, and a part of me still wanted to believe my son could change. But then I remembered that message. The pure contempt distilled in those lines had shown me the truth. Why was I doubting what I had seen? No, Dante. This is as far as we go. You made your choice. I'm making mine. You're going to regret this, he threatened. Silence. That's a prediction, he said and hung up. I sat in the kitchen, my hands clasped on the table, breathing slowly. Was I doing the right thing? Or was I letting pride destroy what was left of my family? I called Evelyn and told her the whole story. The letters, the flowers, the calls. They're wearing you down on purpose, she told me. It's a classic manipulation tactic. They aren't truly sorry, Clarence. They're only sorry they're losing your money. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm being too harsh? Have they apologized for the message? I thought about it. Dante had said he was stressed, that he didn't mean it. But he never said, I'm sorry for hurting you. I was wrong. Tasha hadn't either. No, I answered slowly. They've apologized for how I reacted, not for what they did. There's your answer. She was right. But I needed more than just Evelyn's support. I needed community. I went back to my church group, which I had stopped attending after Ruby died. I started meeting up again with old friends I hadn't seen. I called my niece, Keisha, who drove down from Atlanta the following weekend, and took me to lunch. She listened attentively, serious and non-judgmental. At her age, she was closer to Dante's age than mine, But she understood what I couldn't express to my peers. "Uncle, some people only know how to take," she said at the end. "They don't see relationships as mutual. They see them as a business." It sounds like Dante and Tasha are like that. "He's my son," I whispered. "I know, and that's why it hurts more. But you still have the right to protect yourself." That support sustained me. Every conversation, every coffee, every Sunday service reminded me that I wasn't alone, I wasn't crazy, and that setting boundaries didn't make me a bad person. At the end of the second week, the calls from Dante and Tasha stopped. The silence was a relief, but also unsettling. What were they planning? Were they consulting lawyers or finally accepting my decision? I should have known that acceptance wasn't in their plans. They showed up one Sunday morning, 3 weeks after I returned from Evelyn's. I was eating breakfast when I heard voices at the door. Dante's, Tasha's, and the high-pitched exclamations of my grandkids. They had brought the children. I opened the door before they could even ring the bell. Malik, who was 6, ran toward me. "Grandpa, we brought you cookies. Mommy said you were sick." I felt my heart break. I hugged him tightly, breathing in his scent of grass and cookies. His sister Maya, who was 4, stayed back shyly, then also threw herself into my arms. Over their heads, I locked eyes with Dante. He was smiling, but his eyes didn't match. "We wanted to give you a surprise," Tasha said in a cheerful tone. "It's a beautiful day. We could have a family picnic in the garden like we used to." "You should have called first," I said carefully, letting go of the children. "Don't you want to see us, Grandpa?" Malik asked, confused and hurt. What was I supposed to say? That yes, I wanted to see them, but not as a pressure tool? That I loved them with all my soul? But their parents had poisoned our relationship by using them as bargaining chips? "Of course I want to see you, honey," I replied, "but adults should always call before coming over." "We called you," Dante insisted. "You didn't answer." I had let his name ring on the screen without answering, because I needed to protect my peace. "Come on, Pop," he urged. "Let us in. The kids are excited to spend the day with you, unless you want to reject your own grandkids." His tone was light, but the hidden threat was clear. If I refused them, I was refusing the kids. I stepped aside. What other choice did I have? They settled into the living room. The kids on the floor with coloring books Tasha had conveniently brought, them on the sofa as if it were their own. Tasha pulled out a container of homemade cookies, my favorites. Dante commented on how well-maintained the house was, how valuable it must be, and how much the area had gone up in price. Every word was calculated. "We've been thinking about all this," Tasha said after 20 minutes of awkward small talk. "And we wanted to ask for your forgiveness." "Yeah," Dante added. "We handled it really badly. I never should have sent that message. I was frustrated with work, with the stress over money, and I took it out on you. I'm sorry." It sounded rehearsed, and the kids were just a few feet away, oblivious, coloring. I was supposed to believe this was sincere. "What exactly do you regret?" I asked. Tasha blinked. "Hurting you, making you feel like you don't matter to us." "But do I matter to you, or is it my money that matters?" Dante's jaw tightened. "That's not fair. You've called me incompetent. You've threatened to sue me. And now you're sitting in my living room expecting me to dissolve my trust because you brought the kids and some cookies." "We're trying to make things right," Tasha said, her voice losing its sweetness. "To bring the family back together. You're the one making it impossible." I stood up slowly. "I was the one who set a limit after you, Dante. Wrote to me that I shouldn't count on you. I was the one who protected his assets after years of unclear emergencies that drained my savings. And I am the problem? Lower your voice, Dante whispered. The kids are right there. Then maybe you shouldn't have brought them into this conversation. Tasha stood up abruptly. Malik, Maya, go out to the garden to play. Grandpa has a beautiful garden. The kids ran out happily, understanding nothing. As soon as the door closed, Tasha's mask fell off. Let's stop the theater, she said coldly. You're being selfish and vindictive. You have more money than you'll ever need. And you're hoarding it while your own family struggles. Struggling is having a high-end car, a private club membership, and private school for the kids. Where exactly is the poverty? I asked. That's none of your business, Dante snapped. But my money is your business, right? We're your family after everything we've done for you. Name one single thing you've done for me in 5 years that didn't have your future inheritance as a motivation, I challenged. They didn't know what to say. The silence was devastating. This is what's going to happen, Dante said finally, his voice low and dangerous. You're going to call your lawyer. You're going to cancel that trust. You're going to restore our inheritance, and you'll do it before the end of the month. And if I don't, I asked, or you won't see your grandkids again, Tasha answered calmly, as if she were commenting on the weather. We'll move if we have to. We'll tell them you didn't want to see them, that you chose money over family. I felt as if I'd been hit in the stomach. My grandkids. The idea of never seeing Malik's gap-toothed smile again, of not hearing Maya's off-key little voice singing, took my breath away. But even through the pain, I recognized the maneuver, the ultimate weapon. They were willing to sacrifice their own children's relationship with me just to get money. Get out, I said in a low voice. Pop, out of my house, right now. And if you ever use those children as a tool to pressure me again, I'll put it all in writing. I'll make sure any judge who reads it understands what kind of parents you are. Dante's face turned purple with rage. You're going to regret this. I promise you. The only thing I regret is not seeing who you really were years ago. They left, dragging the kids from the garden, almost without saying goodbye. I managed to hear Malik ask, "But Grandpa?" Before his voice was lost behind the slamming door. I stood there, staring into space, shaking all over. I'd just lost my grandkids. Truly, Dante would carry out his threat. The mere thought made me so sick, I ran to the bathroom and vomited bile. But beneath the fear, something else burned. Fury. How dare they? How dare they use those children as pawns? I wasn't going to give in. I couldn't. Because if I did, what message was I sending them? That they could manipulate me? That threats worked? That they could treat me however they wanted as long as they held the kids hostage? No way. I called Arthur. They just threatened to prevent me from seeing my grandkids if I don't revoke the trust. He answered without hesitation. Note it all down. Write down literally what was said. If they actually follow through, we might be able to use it in the future for visitation issues or even custody. The word custody made my pulse quicken, but he was right. This was no longer just a family spat. It was a war, and wars are won by being smarter, not just tougher. 3 weeks later, the letter from Dante's lawyer arrived. It wasn't Arthur, but a firm from downtown famous for aggressive family litigation. Mr. Galt, our client, Dante Galt, has requested our services to review your situation of mental competency and your recent financial decisions made under possible coercion or diminished capacity. We respectfully request that you submit to an independent psychiatric evaluation. I read it calmly, sitting in my kitchen with my coffee. So, that was the next step. Fine. I called Arthur. They're going for incompetence. They want a psychiatric evaluation. Perfect, he said, almost cheerfully. Clarence, you are one of the most lucid people I know. You're going to pass any test they put in front of you. And their case will fall apart. But we have to be strategic. Accept the evaluation. But we insist it be done by someone from a list approved by the court. We control the process. A week later, I was sitting across from Dr. Patricia Sinclair, a forensic psychiatrist specializing in capacity cases for seniors. Professional, meticulous, and impossible to impress with sentimental stories. For 3 hours, she asked me about my life history, my education, my financial decisions, and my relationship with Dante. She gave me memory tests, logic puzzles, and cognitive assessments. She reviewed my medical reports and interviewed my doctor. When we finished, she made some notes and looked directly at me. Mr. Galt, I will send my formal report to the court, but I can tell you this. There is absolutely no evidence of cognitive decline, diminished capacity, or undue influence. Your decisions, though unusual from the perspective of family dynamics, are rational and well-founded. Thank you, I replied. And off the record, she added, I've seen this pattern many times. Adult children who have positioned themselves as natural heirs react very poorly when parents exercise their autonomy. What you're experiencing is a form of financial elder abuse. They are trying to force you to give in. Her words put a name to something I had only felt as a knot in my stomach. The capacity hearing was set for November 15th in a gray family court that smelled of old wood and nerves. Dante and Tasha sat on the other side with their lawyer, a man with slicked back hair in an expensive suit. They didn't look at me. I sat with Arthur, in my best suit, my hair neat, and my hands steady. Dante's lawyer spoke first. He painted a picture of a widower made vulnerable by grief, isolated and fragile, making erratic decisions without consulting his only family. He hinted that Arthur had influenced me. He suggested the onset of dementia. Arthur listened to it all, impassive. Then Dr. Sinclair took the stand and demolished his narrative in 15 minutes. She detailed my perfect scores on cognitive tests, my total understanding of my financial situation, and my ability to explain the logic behind every move. She mentioned that I managed my house alone, drove, had an active social life, and showed no trace of decline. In fact, she said, looking at the judge, Mr. Galt presents a level of logical reasoning and financial literacy above the average for his age group. His decisions, while emotionally difficult for some family members, are completely coherent and autonomous. Dante's lawyer tried to recover. But, Doctor, isn't it unusual for a father to completely disinherit his only son? Unusual, perhaps, but it is not a criterion for incapacity. Mr. Galt has clear, documented reasons for his decisions. Whether those reasons please his son or not is irrelevant to his mental capacity. The judge, a woman in her 60s, looked at Dante over her glasses. Mr. Galt, did you send a message to your father that read, and I quote literally, "Don't expect me to take care of you when you're old. I have my own life and my own family." Dante turned red. I was angry. He was pressuring me with the money issue, and so you were angry about money. And now you're angry because he's disposing of his money according to his wishes, and not yours. It's not that simple. It seems quite simple to me, the judge retorted. Then she turned to me. Well, Mr. Galt, did anyone force you to make these financial decisions? No, Your Honor. Are you aware of what you are doing and the consequences? Completely aware. Do you wish to make any changes to your estate plan? No, Your Honor. My plan is exactly as I want it. The judge struck the table with her gavel. The petition for incapacity is dismissed. Mr. Galt is in full possession of his faculties and has every right to manage his estate as he sees fit. Case closed. Dante's lawyer gathered his papers in a hurry. Tasha looked in shock. Dante, on the other hand, looked at me with pure hate. In the hallway, he grabbed my arm. This isn't over. Arthur stepped in instantly. Mr. Galt, this could be considered harassment. I would recommend you step away. Dante let go but leaned toward me. You're making a mistake, old man. When you're old, sick, and alone, don't come crying. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw a stranger. When had I lost my son? Or had he never been who I thought he was? Dante, I said in a low voice, I won't be alone. I have friends. I have community. And I have respect for myself. What do you have besides greed? He turned and walked away without responding. I should have felt victorious. I won. But all I felt was emptiness. Arthur put a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing. Then why does it hurt so much? Because love and betrayal can coexist. He's still your son. You have the right to grieve that. I nodded, not trusting my voice. But as we stepped out of the courthouse into the autumn light, something changed inside me. The doubt was gone. The guilt was gone. Only clarity remained. I had won, and I didn't plan on stopping there. 2 months after the hearing, I received a certified letter from the mortgage bank for Dante and Tasha. They had missed 3 months of payments. The bank was starting the foreclosure process. How did I find out? Because they had listed me as an emergency contact years ago and never bothered to update it. That's how I knew they were in serious financial trouble. The luxury car, the private school, the lifestyle, it was all built on debt. And they had been counting on my inheritance for years to plug the hole. A part of me felt a pang of pity. They had children. Malik and Maya didn't deserve to suffer for their parents' bad decisions. But I remembered Tasha's cold threat. You won't see your grandkids again. I remembered Dante's hate in the courthouse hallway. I remembered the years of manipulation disguised as need. I made a decision. I called a private investigator, a retired cop Arthur recommended for inheritance matters. I want you to investigate my son's finances, I told him. I want to know where the money went, what they spent it on. I want documentation. What he found was chilling. In 6 years, Dante and Tasha had spent more than $200,000 beyond their means. Not on necessities, but on vacations to Europe, a boat they used twice, cosmetic surgeries for Tasha, country club fees and private tuition they couldn't afford. And worst of all, they had taken out loans using a future inheritance from me as justification. Several loans at different institutions based on an expectation of money they had never earned. The investigator also found emails. Dante had written to an inheritance lawyer years earlier, asking about ways to accelerate a succession when parents were difficult. That lawyer had refused to follow that path, but the emails existed. Sitting in Arthur's office, reading it all, I felt nauseated. He's been planning this for years, I said. It seems so, Arthur replied. Clarence, I have to ask, do you want to move forward with this? We have indications of fraud, possible financial exploitation. We could file charges. I imagined my son in handcuffs, my grandkids visiting him in prison, the newspapers exploiting the scandal. No, I said at last. No criminal charges. But I want them to know that I know. I want them to understand that they've lost. Arthur helped me draft a letter. It was sent by courier to their house on a Tuesday morning. Dante and Tasha, I now have in my possession complete records of your spending, of the loans taken out against my future inheritance, and of your consultations with lawyers on how to accelerate that process. I also have documented your threats to prevent me from seeing my grandkids, your false accusations about my mental capacity, and your harassment. I want to make one thing clear. I will not be providing you with financial help now or ever. Your mortgage, your debts, and your financial decisions are your responsibility. However, I am not cruel. Attached, you will find information for financial counseling services, debt consolidation resources, and family therapy options. I recommend you use them. My estate plan will remain unchanged. Upon my death, my assets will be distributed according to my trust. You will receive nothing. However, I make you one last offer. If at any point you decide to truly apologize, not because you want something, but because you truly understand the damage you have caused, and if you are willing to rebuild a relationship based on respect and not money, my door will be open. My decision is yours to make. Clarence. I didn't hear from them for 3 weeks until Christmas Eve. There was a knock at the door. I opened it and saw Malik and Maya on the threshold, holding the hand of a woman I didn't know. Dante's car was parked on the street, but he didn't get out. The woman introduced herself as a court-appointed family visit supervisor. It turned out Dante and Tasha had lost the house, had been forced to move in with Tasha's parents in another state, and as part of the bankruptcy process, and following a formal complaint about my rights as a grandfather, I suspect filed by Arthur, the judge had ordered that I be granted supervised visits with my grandkids. They didn't do it out of kindness. They did it because they were forced. But I didn't care. I had my grandkids for 2 hours. We made cookies, read stories, and played under the light snow that began to fall in the garden. When they left, Maya hugged me tight. Grandpa, can we come back? Always, honey, always. I watched the car drive away. Dante didn't look toward my house once. I had won. Not the way I would have wanted. I would have preferred to get my son back whole, loving, and real. But I won in what truly mattered: my autonomy, my dignity, and my peace. And sometimes, that is the only victory possible. 6 months later, spring arrived in Savannah with bursts of purple wisteria and clear mornings. I started each day with my 3-mile walk, feeling stronger than I had in years. My new doctor told me I had the cardiovascular health of someone 15 years younger. Whatever you're doing, keep it up, she smiled. What I was doing was living. Truly living. Following Evelyn's advice, I joined a book club, a group of men and women between 50 and 80 who met every week to talk about books and life. We became very close. Their support was unconditional. I also started volunteering at the Children's Hospital, one of the beneficiaries of my trust. I read stories to kids in treatment, played with them, and offered comfort to exhausted parents. It gave me purpose and filled the grandfather hole Dante and Tasha had left behind. The scholarship fund in Ruby's name had already helped 3 students. I received letters from them full of sincere gratitude that made me cry with emotion. That was a legacy. That actually had meaning. My relationship with my niece, Keisha, became much closer. She came to see me almost every month, and our relationship shifted from just uncle-niece to a real friendship. "You're the wisest person I know," she told me once. Hearing that from someone who barely saw me before meant a lot. I had made peace with my decisions. Yes, the relationship I dreamed of having with Dante still hurt, but I didn't regret protecting myself. I learned that loving someone doesn't mean allowing them to destroy you. That family is defined not by blood, but by respect and mutual care. My house was filled with laughter, friends, and projects. I had season tickets to the symphony with the folks from the book club. I had taken up painting again and even sold 2 pieces at a local gallery. I traveled to see Evelyn almost every month. I even signed up for a cruise with the church group. It was finally the life I deserved. Meanwhile, Dante and Tasha's situation continued to decline. I didn't go looking for information, that would have been petty, but in a city like this, news travels. They filed for bankruptcy. They ended up in a small apartment in a neighborhood they used to look down on. Tasha had to start working in a retail store for the first time in years. Dante lost his business and now sells electronics at a mall. They pulled the kids out of private school, and the boat was repossessed. The luxury car was replaced by an old sedan. They had built their entire lives with money they didn't have, counting on an inheritance they had never earned. I felt more sadness than satisfaction. It saddened me that they had wasted years chasing status instead of building real relationships. It pained me that my grandkids suffered the consequences of their parents' greed. But I learned something fundamental. You can't save people from themselves. You can only protect yourself and build a life worth living. The supervised visits with Malik and Maya continued monthly. "Why don't we see you more, Grandpa?" Malik asked at the last one. "Because sometimes adults make decisions that hurt the people they love," I told him. "But I want you to know something. I will love you always. Always. And whenever you need me, I'll be here." When they turn 18, each will find a letter waiting for them, explaining everything, offering them help with their studies, and assuring them they were always loved. Not by a grandfather desperate to buy affection, but by a man who valued himself enough to demand respect and who hopes they learn to do the same. Now, looking back, I understand what that message gave me, even though it came wrapped in pain. Freedom. Freedom to see clearly, to choose for myself, and to build a life based on dignity and not obligation. I learned that setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's survival. That you can love someone and still refuse to be manipulated. That true family is built with respect, not just blood. My legacy isn't in an account someone inherits. It's in the students who will be able to study, in the sick children who will receive comfort, and in the relationships I built on mutual care. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, two of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen, so you can choose what to watch next.